This testimony was sent to us by a Muslim sister who is now a born-again Christian. In her testimony, she explains her journey from Islam to Christianity. By the end of her testimony, you will learn what she went through because she found the truth. Enjoy listening. I sit here in Jordan, watching the sun paint the sky orange over Amman. My hands shake as I hold this cup of tea, not from cold, but from memories that refuse to stay buried. 3 years have passed since I ran from Yemen, but Yemen hasn't run from me. It lives in my eyes, in the way I still jump when doors slam, in how I whisper prayers even when I'm alone. People ask me why I left everything behind, why I gave up my family, my home, my country. They want to understand how a girl from a good Muslim family could throw it all away. But they don't know what I carried inside me, a secret that burned like fire in my chest. Sometimes I close my eyes and I'm back there. I smell the cardamom that Mama would grind fresh every morning. I hear the call to prayer echoing across our little town, 5 times a day like clockwork. And I see Aisha, my younger sister, with her bright smile and quick laugh. She was my shadow, following me everywhere, copying everything I did. If only she had stopped copying me. The Jordan refugee camp where I live now is nothing like home. Here, people speak softly about the past. We all carry wounds we don't show. But I need to tell this story. I need you to understand why I risked everything: my life, my family's honor, everything I had ever known. It started with a question that I should never have asked. Before we continue, please let me know where you're listening from. It would be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like. It will help this video to reach so many people who need to listen to this testimony, and leave a comment. Share your thoughts about this testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other here on this channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more of this content coming your way. Enjoy listening. Back home in our small town, life moved like the old clock in our kitchen. Steady, predictable, safe. The Houthis controlled everything, but we had learned to live within their rules. Prayer 5 times a day. Women covered from head to toe. No questions about the way things were. I was 22 then, old enough to be married but still living in my father's house. Baba worked at the spice market, coming home each evening with different scents clinging to his clothes. Cinnamon one day, turmeric the next. He was a good man but stern like iron. Salma, he would say to me, a woman's honor is like glass. Once broken, it can never be whole again. Every morning, I would wrap my niqab around me like armor. The black fabric covered everything except my eyes. It was supposed to protect me, to keep me pure and hidden from the world's evil. But as the months passed, I began to feel like it was hiding me from myself too. I spent my days helping Mama with cooking and cleaning, teaching the neighbor children to read, and embroidering scarves to sell at the market. It was a good life, people said. A proper life for a good Muslim girl. But at night, when the house grew quiet and everyone slept, I would lie on my thin mattress and stare at the ceiling. Questions buzzed in my head like flies I couldn't swat away. Why did the prayers feel empty sometimes? Why did God seem so angry in everything the Imam preached? Why did following all the rules still leave me feeling hollow inside? Is God only what they say he is? I whispered to the darkness one night. It was a dangerous question, the kind that could get you in serious trouble in our town. But once I thought it, I couldn't unthink it. Aisha slept on the mat next to mine. Sometimes I could hear her breathing change when I whispered my questions, and I wondered if she was listening. I should have been more careful. I should have kept my dangerous thoughts locked away. But the human heart is not a safe that can be sealed shut forever. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was market day, and I had gone with Mama to buy vegetables. While she bargained with the tomato seller, I wandered to the back of the market where Abu Hassan kept his old bookstall. Abu Hassan was ancient, with a beard like white cotton and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. Most of his books were religious texts, copies of the Quran, books about proper Islamic living, collections of hadith. But tucked between the religious books, I saw something that made my heart stop. It was small and worn, with pages that looked like they had been read many times. The cover was in Arabic, but inside, I could see it was translated. It was a piece of the Christian book, what they called the Injil. My hands trembled as I touched it. This was forbidden. This was the kind of book that could get you killed in our town. But Abu Hassan just looked at me with those knowing eyes and said quietly, "Sometimes God speaks in languages we don't expect." Before I could think about what I was doing, I had tucked it under my abaya and walked away. That night, after everyone was asleep, I pulled the small book from under my mattress where I had hidden it. By the light of my phone, I began to read. The words were different from anything I had ever read before. Where the Quran spoke of God's anger and punishment, these pages spoke of love. Where I had learned to fear God's judgment, these words talked about forgiveness that was free, not something you had to earn through good deeds and perfect behavior. One verse made me cry right there in the darkness. "Come to me, all you who are tired and carrying heavy loads, and I will give you rest." I was tired. So tired of carrying the weight of all those rules, all that fear, all those questions that had no safe answers. This Jesus person was offering rest, not more work, not more rules, just rest. Why does this feel like coming home? I whispered to myself. I should have burned that book right then. I should have thrown it away and never looked back. But instead, I hid it deeper under my mattress and began to hunger for more. 3 weeks later, I made a discovery that changed everything. I had been buying spices for Mama from Abu Hassan's shop when I accidentally knocked over a jar of cardamom pods. They scattered everywhere, rolling under shelves and into corners. As I crawled around trying to gather them up, I heard something impossible singing. It was coming from above, from what I thought was just a storage attic. But this wasn't just any singing. These were songs I had heard on secret Christian websites I had found on my phone late at night when everyone slept. They were singing about Jesus. Abu Hassan saw the look on my face and slowly shook his head. "Child," he said softly, "some things are better left alone." But I couldn't leave it alone. The music called to something deep in my soul. "Please," I whispered, "I need to know." His old eyes studied me for a long moment. Then he sighed and led me to a narrow staircase hidden behind bags of rice. Upstairs, in a small room that smelled of cinnamon and hope, I found them. 7 people sitting in a circle, holding hands, singing quietly. Men and women, old and young, all with the same look in their eyes. The look of people who had found something precious and were terrified of losing it. They stopped singing when they saw me. Fear flashed across their faces. In our town, being discovered as Christians meant imprisonment, torture, sometimes death. But an old man with gentle eyes stood up and smiled. "Welcome, daughter," he said. "We've been praying for you." His name was Yusuf, and he had been a Christian for 15 years. "I used to be angry all the time," he told me later. "Angry at my life, at my failures, at God. Then I read about Jesus walking on water, calming the storm with just his words. I thought, if he can calm the storm on the sea, maybe he can calm the storm in my heart." That's how I learned about the secret church that met in Abu Hassan's attic every Tuesday evening. They taught me songs I had never heard, songs about grace and freedom and love that never ends. We sang in whispers, always watching the door, always ready to scatter if the wrong person came looking. The first time I heard Amazing Grace sung in Arabic, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. It was like someone had written my life story in a song. Those Tuesday evenings became the highlight of my week. For 2 hours, I could ask my dangerous questions and get answers that filled the empty places in my heart instead of creating more fear. I learned that God wasn't just the angry judge I had always known, but also a loving father who wanted to be close to his children. But secrets have a way of growing too big for the spaces we try to keep them in. It was Aisha who betrayed me. I should have known she was listening all those nights when I whispered my questions to the darkness. I should have seen the way she watched me when I came back from the market on Tuesdays. How her eyes followed me when I hid things under my mattress. She was only 17, still young enough to believe that following all the rules would keep us safe. When she found the Christian book while cleaning our room, she didn't come to me first. She went straight to Baba. I was at the evening market buying onions for dinner when it happened. Our neighbor's son, Ahmed, came running up to me with terror in his eyes. "Salma," he gasped, "you need to run. Now, they're at your house." My blood turned to ice. Who's at my house? The religious police and the militia. They have your father with them, and they're searching everything. I dropped the onions and started running, but Ahmed grabbed my arm. "No," he said. "If you go back there now, they'll take you. My mother said to tell you. Your sister told them about the book." The world tilted sideways. Isha, my little sister who used to braid my hair and share secrets with me under the blanket. She had turned me in. I never made it home that night. 3 blocks from our house, a truck full of militia fighters spotted me running. They knew who I was. In a small town, everyone knows everyone's business. They threw a black bag over my head and shoved me into the truck. The last thing I saw was the lights of our house growing smaller in the distance, and I wondered if I would ever see it again. The ride felt like hours, but it was probably only 30 minutes. When they finally pulled the bag off my head, I was in a place I had only heard about in whispered warnings. The compound where they took people who broke the religious laws. It was a concrete building with no windows, surrounded by high walls topped with barbed wire. Inside, the hallways were narrow and dark, lit only by bare bulbs that cast scary shadows on the walls. They threw me into a cell barely big enough for me to lie down in. The floor was cold concrete, and there was a bucket in the corner that I didn't want to think about. The only light came from a small opening near the ceiling that I couldn't reach. I curled up in the corner and tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway. For my family, for my lost home, for the secret church that would never meet again because of me. On my second day there, a man came to see me. His name was Omar, and he wore the black uniform of the religious police. He was maybe 40 years old, with cold eyes and a beard that he kept stroking while he talked. "Salma," he said, sitting on a plastic chair while I stayed pressed against the wall. "You have brought shame on your family. Your father is heartbroken. Your mother cries every day." He let that sink in before continuing. "But I am a merciful man. I have spoken with the commander, and we have agreed to offer you a choice." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What choice?" He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "You can marry me and convert back to proper Islam. I will teach you to be a good wife, to follow the right path. Your family's honor will be restored." The other choice he didn't need to say out loud. I could see it in his eyes, in the way the guards looked at me when they brought my daily bowl of rice and water. "I need time to think," I whispered. He stood up and straightened his uniform. "You have 3 days," he said. "Choose wisely." After he left, I pressed my face against the cold wall and tried to pray. But the only words that came were the ones I had learned in Abu Hassan's attic. "Come to me, all you who are tired and carrying heavy loads, and I will give you rest." I was more tired than I had ever been in my life. On my 3rd day in that concrete hell, I heard singing. It was so quiet I almost thought I was imagining it, but as I pressed my ear to the wall, I could make out the words. Someone in the cell next to mine was humming "Amazing Grace" in Arabic. I tapped softly on the wall. The singing stopped. Then, after a moment, I heard a gentle tap in response. "Sister," came a whisper through the wall. "Are you also one of his?" That's how I met Miriam. She had been in the compound for 2 months. Like me, she had been caught with Christian materials, and not just a small book, but a whole Bible that she had been copying by hand to give to other seekers. They had beaten her when they brought her in. She told me through the wall during our whispered conversations. Her left arm didn't work properly anymore, but her spirit was unbroken. "They can hurt our bodies," she whispered to me one night, But they cannot touch what's in here. I couldn't see her, but I knew she was pointing to her heart. Miriam became my lifeline in that place. When I felt like giving up, she would scratch Bible verses into the wall with a nail she had found, and I would trace them with my fingers in the darkness. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want became my favorite. In that place where I wanted for everything, food, light, freedom, hope, those words reminded me that I was not forgotten. She told me about her life before. She had been a teacher, married with 2 young children. When her husband discovered her faith, he had turned her in to save himself from suspicion. She hadn't seen her children in 6 months. Do you ever regret it? I asked her one night when the guards were far away and we could speak a little louder. There was a long pause. Then she said, I regret the pain it has caused the people I love, but I cannot regret finding truth. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. How can I regret finding life? It was Miriam who first mentioned escape. There is a guard, she whispered one evening. Bilal. He is not like the others. Sometimes I see sadness in his eyes when he looks at us. I think he questions what they are doing here. I had noticed Bilal too. He was younger than the other guards, maybe 25, with a gentle face that didn't match his uniform. When he brought our food, he never looked directly at us, and he walked more quietly than the others, as if he was trying not to disturb us. What are you thinking? I asked. I am thinking that God sometimes uses the least likely people to do his work, she replied. And I am thinking that if we stay here much longer, we will both be dead. She was right. Every day, more people disappeared from the cells around us. We never saw them again. That night, Miriam began working on a plan. She had been watching the guards' routines, counting their steps, timing their rounds. She had found a loose stone in her wall and had been working it free with her nail for weeks. We will have one chance, she told me. Maybe less, but I would rather die trying to escape than die in here waiting. 2 days later, Omar came to see me again. Time is up, he said. What is your answer? I looked at his cold eyes and thought about Miriam in the cell next to me, about the secret church in Abu Hassan's attic, about the verse that had promised rest for the weary. I need one more night, I lied, to pray about it properly. He frowned but nodded. One more night. Tomorrow morning, you will give me your final answer. After he left, I tapped on the wall. Tonight, Miriam whispered back. It has to be tonight. The airstrike came at 2:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had been lying awake, watching the small patch of sky visible through my cell's high opening, waiting for Miriam's signal. When the first bomb hit somewhere across town, the whole building shook, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The guards started shouting and running. In the chaos, I heard Miriam's whispered call, "Now, sister, now or never." She had been right about Bilal. When the alarm started going off and the other guards ran to their emergency positions, he came to our cells. His hands were shaking as he pulled out a ring of keys. "I cannot do this anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "I cannot watch them kill people for believing different things." He opened Miriam's cell first. When I saw her in the dim hallway light, my heart broke. She was so thin, and her left arm hung at a strange angle. But her eyes still burned with that unbreakable light. "Quickly," Bilal whispered, opening my cell. "I know a way out, but we must move fast." He led us through corridors I had never seen, past empty cells and storage rooms, toward the back of the compound. My legs were weak from 3 weeks of sitting in that tiny space, and I had to lean against the walls to keep from falling. Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Through a cracked window, I could see orange light flickering in the distance. "The bombing will keep them busy for a while," Bilal said. "But not long. When they realize prisoners are missing, they will search everywhere." He led us to a small door I had never noticed. It was painted the same color as the wall and had no handle from the inside. He pushed it open, and suddenly we were outside in the night air. I wanted to cry from relief. After 3 weeks of breathing stale air and seeing only concrete walls, the open sky felt like a gift. Stars sparkled above us like tiny promises. But we weren't free yet. "There is a wadi about 2 kilometers north," Bilal told us, pointing toward low hills in the distance. "Follow it west for maybe 5 kilometers, and you will reach the main road. There are people there who help refugees get across the border." He pressed a small bundle into Miriam's good hand. "Some food and a little money. It is all I can give you." Miriam grabbed his hand with her working fingers. "Why are you doing this?" He looked away. "My sister was like you. She asked too many questions, believed the wrong things. They took her 2 years ago. I never saw her again." His voice broke. "I could not save her, but maybe I can save you." We started walking toward the hills, but Miriam was moving too slowly. Her injuries were worse than she had let on, and she kept stumbling in the darkness. "Go ahead," she gasped after falling for the 3rd time. "I am slowing you down." "No," I said, pulling her arm over my shoulders. "We go together or not at all." But by the time we reached the wadi, I could see lights moving behind us. Flashlights, cutting through the darkness like angry eyes. They were following us. Miriam saw them too. She stopped walking and turned to face me. "Salma," she said, her voice calm despite our situation. "You must go without me. I won't leave you. You must." She pressed something into my hand, the nail she had used to scratch Bible verses into the wall. "Remember what we learned in that place. Remember that He is faithful, even when everything else fails." The lights were getting closer. I could hear dogs barking now. "Go," Miriam said firmly. "Live. Tell our story. Make sure the world knows we were here." I wanted to argue, but she pushed me away with surprising strength. "Go!" So I ran. Through the wadi, stumbling over rocks and thorns, following the dry riverbed west like Bilal had told us. Behind me, I heard shouts, then a gunshot, then terrible silence. I kept running until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When I finally collapsed beside a large boulder, I looked back toward the compound. The lights had stopped moving. Miriam was gone. I cried until no more tears would come. Then I got up and kept walking, carrying her memory with me like a torch in the darkness. Just before dawn, I reached the main road, and there, like an answer to prayer, was a truck with its engine running and a man beside it scanning the horizon with worried eyes. "Are you the one Bilal sent word about?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Get in the back," he said gently. "We have a long way to go." As the truck pulled away, heading toward the Jordanian border, I clutched Miriam's nail in my fist and whispered the words she had taught me. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." But I wanted everything. I wanted her back. I wanted to go home. I wanted my old life, even with all its limitations. Instead, I was heading into a completely unknown future, carrying nothing but the clothes on my back and the faith that had cost me everything. The Za'atari refugee camp looked like a city made of tin and canvas stretched across the desert. Rows and rows of small shelters, separated by dusty paths where children played with homemade toys and women hung laundry on makeshift lines. I was alive, but I wasn't living. My shelter was barely bigger than the cell I had escaped from. Just enough room for a thin mattress, a small gas burner, and the few belongings the aid workers had given me. A blanket, some clothes, basic supplies. At night, I would lie on that mattress and listen to the sounds of thousands of other displaced people trying to sleep, trying to forget, trying to hope. The days blended together like sand in the wind. I would wake up, eat the breakfast the aid workers distributed, sit outside my shelter and watch life move around me without really being part of it. I was safe, safer than I had been in months, but safety felt hollow when everyone you loved was gone. Other refugees would try to talk to me sometimes. Where was I from? What was my story? But I couldn't tell them the truth. Even here, among people who had lost everything, being a Christian convert was dangerous. Some of the refugees were more religious than the people I had fled from. Some might turn me in if they knew, so I became invisible. Just another woman in black sitting quietly in the corner, never drawing attention, never making waves. It was Pastor Sammy who found me. He was a small man with kind eyes and calloused hands, running a little church in Amman that helped refugees. Someone had told him there was a young woman in the camp who seemed particularly lost, and he came looking for me on a hot Tuesday afternoon. "Sister," he said, sitting down beside me in the shade of my shelter. "You look like someone carrying a heavy load." I looked at him suspiciously. In my experience, strange men who started conversations with religious language were usually trouble. But then he smiled and said, "Would you like some tea? I have a thermos, and it's too much for one person." That's how I learned that kindness still existed in the world. Pastor Sammy didn't push. He just sat there, sharing his tea and making small talk about the weather, the camp conditions, anything except the hard questions I wasn't ready to answer. When he left, he simply said, "I'll be here next Tuesday if you'd like more tea." He came back every Tuesday for 6 weeks before I finally started talking. I lost someone. I told him one afternoon when the grief felt too heavy to carry alone. Someone important, and I can't even tell anyone who she was or why she mattered. He nodded like he understood. Grief is lonely when it has to be secret. "Are you a Christian?" I asked suddenly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I am a man who follows Jesus, if that's what you're asking. And I think maybe you are too." That's when I started crying. Not the quiet tears I had been shedding for months, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from the bottom of my soul. All the fear, all the loss, all the loneliness I had been carrying came pouring out. Pastor Sammy didn't try to stop me or comfort me with easy words. He just sat there, a steady presence in the storm, until I was empty. "Would you like to come to church?" he asked when I finally stopped crying. "It's not much, just a few people meeting in a small room. But we sing together, and we remember that we're not alone." The next Sunday, he picked me up in his old car and drove me into Amman. The church was exactly what he had described. Just a small room above a tailor's shop, with maybe 20 people sitting on plastic chairs. But when they started singing, I felt something I hadn't felt since those Tuesday evenings in Abu Hassan's attic. I felt like I was home. These people understood. Half of them were refugees like me, people who had lost everything because of their faith. The other half were Jordanians who had chosen to help us, to risk their own safety to provide a place where we could worship freely. They welcomed me without asking questions. They gave me a Bible in Arabic, the first one I had ever owned. They taught me new songs and invited me to dinner at their homes. Slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. Pastor Sammy's wife, Fatima, taught me to sew. "It will give you something to do with your hands," she said, "and maybe someday a way to support yourself." I was good at it. My fingers, trained by years of embroidery, adapted quickly to the sewing machine. Soon I was making clothes for other refugees, mending torn items, creating beautiful things from scraps of fabric. But the best part was the women who would come to the sewing circle. As we worked, we would share stories, carefully, quietly, always watching to make sure we were safe. I learned that I wasn't the only one who had lost family because of faith. I wasn't the only one who carried guilt and grief like stones in my chest. There was Layla, who had fled Syria after her husband was killed for helping Christians. There was Nadia, whose children had been taken from her when she converted. There was Amina, who had walked across 3 countries to escape an arranged marriage to a man who had promised to beat the Christianity out of her. We were a family of the broken, stitching our lives back together one thread at a time. But even surrounded by love and safety, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living someone else's life. At night, I would dream of Yemen, of Mama's cardamom tea, of Aisha's laugh, of the mountains that surrounded our little town. I would wake up crying, homesick for a place where I could never return. And always I thought about Miriam, her courage, her sacrifice, her unshakable faith even in the darkest place. She had died so I could live, but some days I wasn't sure I was worthy of that gift. 2 years into my life in Jordan, I started writing letters. Not real letters. I had no way to send them, and it would have been dangerous for everyone involved if I had tried. But I needed to say the things that lived in my heart like thorns, the words that kept me awake at night. I wrote to Aisha first. My dear sister, I know you must hate me. I know you think I brought shame on our family, and maybe you're right. But I need you to know that I don't hate you for what you did. You were scared. You were trying to protect the family the only way you knew how. In your place, I might have done the same thing. I remember when you were 7 and fell off Ahmed's bicycle. You scraped your knees so badly, but you didn't cry until you got home and saw Mama's worried face. Then you cried like your heart was breaking, not from the pain, but from seeing how much you had scared the person you loved. That's how I imagine you felt when you found my book. Scared that I was going to destroy everything we held dear. Scared that I was going to bring punishment on all of us. You were right to be scared. I did bring punishment, but not because I was wrong, because the people in power couldn't handle anyone thinking differently. I forgive you, little sister. I hope someday you can forgive me too. Your loving sister, always, Salma. I wrote to Mama and Baba next. My dear parents, I dream about you every night. Mama, I dream about your hands as you kneaded bread, how you would hum while you worked. Baba, I dream about the way you smelled like spices when you came home from the market, how you would tell us stories after dinner. I know I disappointed you. I know you raised me to be a good Muslim daughter, and instead I became the thing you feared most. But please understand, I didn't choose this to hurt you. I chose it because it was true, and once I found truth, I couldn't unknow it. Do you ever think about me? Do you wonder if I'm alive? Do you pray for me even though I pray to a different God now? I pray for you every day. I pray that you are safe, that you have enough food, that the war hasn't touched our town. I pray that you remember the daughter who loved you, not just the one who disappointed you. I would give anything to sit at our kitchen table again, to help Mama prepare dinner, to listen to Baba's stories. But I can't come home. You know why? Please know that I love you. I will always love you. And somewhere in my heart, I believe you still love me too. Your daughter, Salma. The hardest letter was to Miriam. My dear friend, my sister in faith. 3 years have passed since that night in the Wadi, and I still see your face every day. I still hear your voice whispering Bible verses through the wall. I still carry the nail you gave me. You told me to live, to tell our story. I'm trying, but some days I don't know how. Some days I feel guilty for being alive when you are not. Some days I wonder if I deserve to escape more than you did. Some days I think about giving up, about letting the sadness win. But then I remember what you taught me in that terrible place. You taught me that faith is not about feeling good or having an easy life. You taught me that following Jesus sometimes means walking through the valley of the shadow of death. You walked through that valley before me, and you showed me it could be done with dignity and courage. You showed me that they could take our freedom, they could hurt our bodies, but they could never touch what we carried in our hearts. I'm trying to live worthy of your sacrifice. I'm trying to be brave like you were. I'm trying to remember that every day I have is a gift that you bought with your life. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for showing me what faith looks like when everything else is stripped away. Thank you for proving that love is stronger than fear. I will see you again someday, in the place where there are no more tears, no more pain, no more persecution. Until then, I carry you with me. Your grateful sister, Salma. After I wrote those letters, I felt lighter somehow. The words that had been trapped inside me were finally free, even if no one else would ever read them. Pastor Sammy found me crying over them one evening during sewing circle. Writing can be a form of prayer, he said gently. Sometimes we need to speak our pain before we can release it. "I miss them so much," I whispered. "All of them, even the ones who hurt me." "Missing them means you loved them well," he replied. "That's not something to be ashamed of." He was right. Love doesn't disappear just because circumstances change. The people who shaped me, who raised me, who shared my childhood, they were still part of me, even if we could never be together again. But I was learning that family isn't just about blood. The people in that little church, the women in the sewing circle, Pastor Sammy and Fatima, they had become my family too. Different from the one I had lost, but real and precious in their own way. I was starting to understand what Jesus meant when he said, "Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." I had lost one family but gained another. Both losses and gains were part of the same story, the story of what it costs to follow truth and what it gives in return. Yesterday, I stood in front of our little church and told my story for the first time. It was a Sunday morning, and Pastor Sammy had asked if anyone wanted to share their testimony, to tell the others how God had worked in their lives. I had been listening to other people's stories for 3 years, but I had never been brave enough to tell my own. But as I sat there in that circle of plastic chairs, looking at faces that had become dear to me, I realized something. Miriam had died so I could live, but she had also died so I could speak. Her sacrifice wasn't just about my physical survival. It was about making sure the story didn't end with her death. So I stood up on shaking legs and began to talk. I told them about the girl I used to be, wrapped in black fabric and afraid of her own questions. I told them about finding a forbidden book and discovering that God could be loving instead of just frightening. I told them about the secret church in Abu Hassan's attic, where we sang hymns in whispers and learned that faith could be joyful. I told them about the betrayal, the imprisonment, and the woman in the cell next door who became my teacher in the darkest place I had ever known. I told them about the escape, the sacrifice, the long journey to safety that felt like walking through a desert of grief. When I finished, the room was completely quiet. Then, one by one, people began to cry. Not sad tears, but tears of recognition. The kind you cry when you realize you're not alone in your pain. An older man named Ibrahim came up to me afterward. "Sister," he said, "I have been carrying shame for 15 years because I thought I was the only one who had lost family because of faith. Thank you for showing me I am not alone." That's when I understood something important. Our scars aren't just marks of what we've survived. They're also gifts we can give to other people who are still fighting the same battles. After church, I walked to the olive grove outside of Amman where I go when I need to think. It's a peaceful place, with old trees that have been growing here longer than any of the troubles in our region. I like to sit under them and remember that some beautiful things survive even when everything else seems to be falling apart. I pulled out the nail that Miriam had given me. I carry it everywhere now, like a reminder of her courage, and I started to sing. I sang Amazing Grace in Arabic, the way we used to sing it in Abu Hassan's attic. I sang it loud enough for Miriam to hear, wherever she is now. I sang it for all the people still trapped in cells and compounds, still hiding their faith, still wondering if God really loves them. As I sang, I felt something shift inside me. For 3 years, I had been surviving, getting through each day, learning to sew, making friends, building a new life. But I hadn't really been living. Living means more than just being safe. It means using the freedom you've been given. It means turning your pain into purpose, your scars into strength. I thought about all the girls like me, girls in Yemen, in Syria, in Iran, in so many places around the world, who are hiding Christian books under their mattresses, whispering dangerous questions in the dark, wondering if there's anyone else like them. They need to know they're not alone. They need to know it's possible to survive, to escape, to build a new life. They need to hear that the love of Jesus is worth whatever it costs to follow him. When I got home that evening, I sat down at my small table and began to write. Not a letter this time, but a story, this story. The story of a girl who carried Yemen in her eyes and learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. I wrote about cardamom and betrayal, about prison cells and secret churches, about sacrifice and survival. I wrote about the woman who died to save me and the faith that gave her the courage to do it. As I wrote, I could feel the weight I had been carrying for 3 years finally beginning to lift. The guilt about surviving when Miriam didn't. The shame about losing my family. The fear that I would never be truly free. All of it began to dissolve like salt in water, leaving behind something clear and pure. The knowledge that I am exactly where God wants me to be. This morning, I woke up before dawn and walked to the roof of my building to watch the sunrise over Amman. The city was quiet, with just a few early birds singing in the distance. The sky slowly changed from black to deep blue to gold, painting the white stone buildings with warm light. I am not the same girl who left Yemen 3 years ago. That girl was afraid of her own thoughts, afraid of asking questions, afraid of disappointing people. This woman, me, now, still gets scared sometimes, but she's not controlled by fear anymore. I am not who I was. I am His. I belong to Jesus, the one who called me out of darkness into light, who loved me enough to lead me through the valley of the shadow of death, who gave me sisters like Miriam and a new family in this little church. The girl who carried Yemen in her eyes has learned something important. You can leave a place behind without losing what was beautiful about it. I still love the taste of cardamom, still find peace in the sound of morning prayers, still carry the good memories of my childhood like treasures in my heart. But I also know that home isn't just a place you come from. Sometimes it's a place you grow into, a family you choose, a faith you discover even when it costs you everything. Tonight, I will go to the sewing circle and teach a new refugee how to use the machine. Tomorrow, I will help Pastor Sammy distribute food to families who just arrived at the camp. Next week, I will stand up in church again and maybe tell another part of my story. I will keep living, keep breathing, keep singing hymns loud enough for Miriam to hear, because she didn't die just so I could survive. She died so I could thrive. And with God's help, I will spend the rest of my life making sure her sacrifice was worth it. The sun is fully up now, painting the world gold and full of possibilities. I can smell bread baking in the apartments below, hear children getting ready for school, feel the warm desert wind carrying promises I can't quite name yet. But I'm not afraid of the unknown anymore. I've learned that when you walk with Jesus, every ending is also a beginning. Every loss makes room for something new. Every scar tells a story of survival. I am the girl who carried Yemen in her eyes and found Jesus in the darkness. I am the woman who learned that freedom costs everything and gives back even more. I am Salma, daughter of refugees, sister to the broken, follower of the one who makes all things new. And I am finally, completely, joyfully alive. Thank you for listening. If you have been blessed by this testimony, please like this video. It will help YouTube to show it to more audience who need to hear about these testimonies today. Also share this video to your loved ones. It will be a great way to communicate Christ to others, and that will be the greatest gift you can give to those that you love. If you are yet to subscribe to our channel, please do so. It's free and it's a way of joining this great community of believers. Join us today and your life will not remain the same. Until next time, remain blessed.